Today's show is going to be a little bit of a departure from our normal Tuesday 3 p.m. show with Larry Nichols. Larry, how are you feeling today?
I'm okay. I'm here.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Appreciate that you're here, Larry. We're going to have a special guest today. And before we bring her in, I just wanted to remind everybody that if you're watching the show every Tuesday at 2 p.m., Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, and if you appreciate Larry's insights and the experience that he shares with us and his unique commentary on current events and historic events, it's more important than ever that people support Larry. He's got a particular need this week, and he's a little embarrassed to discuss it. But Larry's been very generous in promoting Crowdsource the Truth, so I want to make sure that people watching us today go to nicholslive.com, and if you haven't contributed to Larry financially in the past, if you're listening week over week, it's really important. Even if it's $5, get onto PayPal and use Larry's email address, nicholslive@aol.com. You're going to want to help Larry out because he really needs this now. He's trying to raise $2,000. And I know that that's a lot of money. We're not asking any one individual to come up with that sum. But if you're out there and you can help Larry, he's got ongoing health issues. He's got the day-to-day issues of trying to keep himself going there in Arkansas. And Larry, today we're joined by another Arkansanian, if that's what you guys call each other there in Arkansas.
Jason, it's Arkansan.
Arkansan. We've got another very important Arkansan joining us. We're joined by Elly Holder. How are you, Elly?
I'm doing just fine. I'm glad to be here today.
And thank you for taking the time out of your day, Elly. You're a resident there in Arkansas, and like so many people, you have had more than your fill of these, strange and coincidental and unexplained deaths that, let's face it, everybody there in Arkansas knows that these are Clinton-linked deaths. And even in the absence of court-admissible evidence, there's a lot of people who know that through a variety of means, maybe most clearly the corrupt coroner, Fahmy Malak, the Clintons, for a long time, were on a tear of literally getting away with murder. Elly, why don't you give us a little background on exactly why you and I are in communication and how you became aware of the case of Don Henry and Kevin Ives, two young teenage boys that were discovered dead on the train tracks there in Arkansas?
Well, first of all, I want to say, and I didn't tell you that on the phone, is when I first moved to Arkansas in 1981, 82, I seen the Clintons as a young couple that were running for governor.
Yeah.
And they were, he was attorney general. And I thought, wow, how awesome. And then I heard everybody saying, oh, no, you don't realize how corrupt they are. I said, oh, well, tell me about it. So I did hear a little bit. And then later on in the years, I had seen obstruction of justice, and it had Larry Nichols in it. And I had seen about BCCI and AFTA, or AFDA. And then from there, I had learned about the deaths of the boys. And, so I looked into it. And I'm a big history buff, news buff. And so I investigated it. And, everything I found out with Larry Nichols was true. And when he stood on the steps of the Capitol and he was saying how corrupt the Clintons were, I believed him wholeheartedly. And I checked it out, and he was so true. Everything backed him up. The court records backed him up. And, it got people thinking about it. And then, we had the Barry Seal came out. And then Sarah McClinton, she asked Bill Clinton about it, and he just lied. And that got people in Arkansas buzzing about the boys. And then I had reached out to Linda Ives. And, I do it slowly. I don't like to rush in because I don't want people to think I'm just a reporter that wants the story. And the more I heard from Linda and the more I found out, and she's got all the documents, and the more I heard from her and checked out the documents, it was just heartbreaking. I myself lost my son to a horrible accident, and to lose, and for her to lose it this way, we didn't ask for the Clintons to drag us into this. Mm-hmm. We're hometown people. And she is just a simple mom that, is raising her kids, and to be drug in with the Clintons, it was horrible. This whole situation is horrible. Yeah. And, so the more I looked into it, it's just so, the Clintons, they love, and Larry will probably say this too, they bring in so much that it confuses you. Because there's so many aspects to their criminal elements that they have done, not just to this state. They raised us 127 times in taxes, and they crippled our state. So we've got people mad at this. They're mad about Kirk Lane now being the drug czar, in charge of, he is the drug director for the state. It's just so many aspects, and they keep putting their people in power.
Right.
They put judges in power, mayors, chief of police, all through the state. So there is no way we can hardly even touch them at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things that you've just said, Elly, is that, I think a lot of people, you think about somebody like Jeffrey Epstein dying in prison, or Mohammed Morsi dying inside a glass box in court in Egypt. And I'm not saying that those things are good or acceptable, but to some extent, those are people who lived by the sword, die by the sword. They're involved in all these shady international political deals. But in the case of Don Henry and Kevin Ives, they're two essentially innocent young boys who are just hanging out, smoking weed on a weekend. I mean, something that's legal basically in many states now, and hardly hurting anybody but themselves, if even. And they're murdered. And not only are they murdered, well, the official story is that they fell asleep on the tracks and died, but these kids had nothing to do with the Clintons, and yet they're brought into this. And for 32 years, details about their deaths have been held back, even from the parents. Documents redacted. Larry, what can you say about what Elly is telling us and your involvement in that documentary, which appears to be no longer available in this whole case?
Well, Jason, Elly, when I first met Linda Ives, Pat Matriciano, the man that produced the Clinton Chronicles, he took me and introduced me to Linda. And at that time, the story was that they supposedly fell asleep on the track and were run over by a train. And of course, that didn't make any sense. So I promised Linda, and Elly, you can talk to Linda, she'll verify this, I believe. I told her that I would do everything I could to try to find out the truth. And in looking into it, what I found out was that there was no way they fell asleep and were run over by the train. And then I also looked at the signature. The signature was Fahmy Malak. And when he put that ruling out, then you knew something was up. And at that time, soon after that, Elly, you'll remember this, we brought in, Linda and the families brought in the medical examiner from Atlanta. And I think it was Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that medical examiner ruled that, I think it was Don Henry, I may have this backwards, it's been so long, but Don Henry had his skull crushed, and Kevin...
That was Kevin Ives.
All right, Kevin was stabbed, and Don Henry's skull was crushed. They had obviously been murdered. Now, I started digging through the work that I had done through ADFA, and I came across, believe it or not, an overlay of a map. And as it turns out, where they were found on the railroad track, about 50 to 75 yards across this wooded area was a pickup place. I think it was number 13. And what that was, as the drugs came into Neenah, they would cut them up into different shipments, and then planes would come in to these little airstrips, or just pastures really, and pick them up and take them wherever they were going. In the case of that area, they were going to Detroit. So obviously what happened was Kevin and Don Henry stumbled in to one of those pickups, and because of that, they were murdered. The problem was, as with all things, as Elly can tell you, the problem is, who do you call?
Right.
Who can you get in touch with to get it pursued? And the answer was, back then, as I'm sure it still is today, virtually nobody, because they control the prosecutors, they control the judges, they control the sheriffs, and it was horrible.
Now, wasn't there even some eyewitness? There was a third boy who had come forward later saying that he was smoking marijuana with the two of them. There was some kind of outrageous finding by Malak that these two kids had smoked 20 joints, which is so absurd. I mean,
I don't know about any of that. And
Jason, I can answer that.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Elly.
Okay, there was 5 boys there or more.
Wow.
There was some that was down at a little grocery store that had known about this, but there was boys. There was one that was on a motorcycle when the boys were grabbed, that he took off on his motorcycle. The others ran into the woods and hid. All these boys have been killed. Most of them within the first year of the investigation. There was I believe his name was Danny. Let me look for it. Oh, goodness.
Well, one of them
Nihas, and he lived till his 30s, and then when things started coming back out, he ended up dead. So there were witnesses, and other witnesses that were there for the Clintons. They have also ended up dead. There was a Keith McCaskill. He's dead.
Yeah.
Keith Coney. He's dead. Dan Harmon was there. Richard Garrett was there. Kirk Lane was there. Jane Campbell was there. Billy Jack Haynes, one of our new witnesses, was there. And Charlene Wilson. And Nihas verifies that there was a vehicle that Charlene Wilson said she was in. He described it. So he backs up her being there. She also seen boys at the store where he was at. It verifies that he was there. And Nihas also verifies it was either Dan Harmon or Kirk Lane that dated his mother. So he recognized him. So now we have witnesses that are verifying witnesses at the scene. Now, I'll let you go ahead and
McCaskill, just so that you know, McCaskill, his father owned a tire company here in Conway, and somehow they're kind of like kin to us. And his father came to me and said he didn't believe what happened to his son when I checked that out. So I go and check it out, and come to find out, his son, who weighed not 100 pounds, supposedly killed a guy or beat up a guy that was like a 250-pound bouncer. And then they came to his house and killed him.
Wow.
It was totally unbelievable. Just another one of those unbelievable things. Then that Charlene Wilson came to me, and she was scared to death. She was Danny Harmon, who was a friend of mine back then. Dan was after her and literally got her, as I recall, Elly, I think she got put in jail, and she was scared to death to talk, because if she did, she knew she would never get out.
Right.
But she eventually did. She eventually did tell her story, and it was verified.
Now, just to back you guys up for a moment, Larry, we've got some people in the comments who are possibly not familiar with this exactly. This is the case of two boys that were found on the train tracks. The official finding in 1987 was that they had smoked 20 marijuana joints, which is like saying that each of them drank 3 cases of beer. It just seems physically impossible. That they smoked all this weed and fell asleep on train tracks lying perfectly next to each other, taking a nap on the train tracks with a rifle with them, and they were run over by the train and found to have been killed by that train accident. However, as we are hearing from Elly, the mother of Kevin Ives, Linda, has been so persistent in her quest to find the truth because, like so many, she knows that this is a fake story. She, as recently as September 20th, there was a ruling. I'm looking at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. She's got a civil lawsuit now, and the lawsuit has been dismissed just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. September 20th, this is being reported. The lawsuit over the records in the Arkansas teen's 1987 death is dismissed. And what we've got here is a little reproduction from a newspaper from 1987 saying that the death of the 2 teens on the railroad tracks leaves few clues. And in Alexander, Arkansas, investigators said they found few clues on Monday that would shed light on the deaths of the 2 teen boys. But that's actually not true. We've since heard that a piece of cardboard was found that looked as if the boys might have been dragged there. The very fact that they were laying side by side on the tracks is certainly a clue that something strange was going on. But this article primarily focuses on the lawsuit that is being brought now by the Ives family in an effort to release some of these documents. I mean, this is another point of evidence in as much as if it were simply a matter of 3 teenagers smoking pot and falling asleep on the train tracks, why would there be a need to redact documents and for the Department of Homeland Security and all these government agencies to be involved?
You know, Jason, this is the situation that Elly has run into, I'm sure, since she started looking into this. You're seeing in Arkansas what you're seeing in Washington. In Arkansas, in that day and still today, persists the fact that there's no one you can call. You're not. It's obvious. It's obvious to anyone that looks just remotely at Kevin Ives and Don Henry and their death. It's obvious that it's not what they said it was.
Right.
It's obvious. Mm-hmm. But where do you go? Where does Linda go for justice? Where do they go to get, if nothing else, just to get closure? How can they live without closure of knowing what really happened?
Absolutely. And you know, Larry, part of the reason why I invited Elly to join us today, and Elly, I do have to thank you for your patience with me. Elly had contacted me by email months ago after watching our show, and I've been meaning to get back to her for so long, and I really do appreciate her patience. Anyone who is out there waiting to have me get in touch with them, please be patient. But I wanted to get you guys together because, Larry, I've got the feeling that President Trump has been draining the swamp, and it doesn't drain quietly and it doesn't drain quickly, but it seems like right now we're in a new and unique climate. Jeffrey Epstein has gone to jail. Ed Buck has gone to jail. The Singh brothers from Ramboxy, who are involved with the Clintons in delivering adulterated pharmaceuticals around the world, have gone to jail in India. And it does feel like the Clintons may be in more jeopardy now than they've ever been before. And it's my hope that by bringing Elly together with you, Larry, and hopefully we'll get Linda Ives involved in the conversation. I know there was this professional wrestler, what's his name there?
Billy Jack Haynes.
Right, Billy Jack, who was a witness as well. So I'm hopeful, Larry, that, you know, basically what Elly has demonstrated to us is the power of this crowdsource process. She was just watching the video and now she's participating. So hopefully we can continue to get a crowdsource investigation going.
Yeah, Elly, let me say thank you, honey, for coming out and doing what you've done and for staying with the case. I feel
Oh, I've
huge failure on my that I couldn't do any more than I did. But good heavens, Elly, there's just been so much corruption that I was in the middle of or around. But that one's always haunted me. It's haunted me because I had to look Linda in the eye, and it's just terrible. But thank you for what you're doing. I'm just honored to be here with you.
Well, I've reached out to your show, and I just haven't gotten back in touch, Larry, but I would like to get together with you. I am very involved in this. It has touched my heart, and not just the boys. It's other things that's happened. I mean, we put the name Arkansas out there, Larry. Me, you, Linda Ives, the people involved in this, we made Arkansas come alive. We really have. And Jason, it was in the Malak, family Malak, when he did the autopsies, and this is what caught my attention was, and I'm going to change it up. It was Kevin Ives that was smashed in the head. And the reason they smashed his head in, skull in, and it was pretty graphic. And when Malak did the autopsy, he carved his face up so bad to cover the smash of the head. His face was unrecognizable. And Don Henry was stabbed in the back. And I believe it was Campbell that did it. And he left the knife in there just to make sure he was dead. These are not nice men. These are not nice men.
We should tell people, Elly, when you're talking about Campbell, I think you mean Jake Campbell, who was either Arkansas State Trooper. Who was Jake Campbell?
Well, I know, Larry might know that.
Larry?
Of
Who was
all
he?
their positions.
He was a county deputy. He worked for Harmon.
Harmon was the sheriff?
Yes.
And that would have been Alexander Sheriff's Office?
I think it's Saline County. Saline County Sheriff's Office.
Saline County. So what's happened to these guys, Larry?
Well, Harmon ended up getting prosecuted for something, spent some time in jail. I have not heard from him.
Drugs, cocaine.
I haven't heard about him in years. Campbell, actually, Pat Matriciano went out on a limb, and he didn't have sufficient evidence, but more than that, he went into a loaded court, and Campbell, and maybe it was Harmon anyway, Campbell and one other person that they had mentioned in one of the Clinton Chronicles 4 or 5, whatever, where they mentioned them as being the ones that killed them. They sued Pat Matriciano and won like $500,000.
Whoa.
Suit literally put Jeremiah Films out of business.
Wow.
But I warned Pat. I warned him against it because it's the same thing that we face today. When you go into court in Arkansas, you're toast. It's rigged. You're not going to win. And they lost.
Wow. Well, we're looking at an article here, Larry, again from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette from November of 2018 that shows a current photo of Mr. Campbell, Officer Campbell, and it's letting us know that Deputy Jake Campbell of the Saline County Sheriff's Office was recently named Saline County's Officer of the Year by the Attorney General's office.
Yeah, go figure. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Look, Jason, this is what I've tried to tell your audience since you and I have been doing this program. This system is deep. This system is complete. And it's now in Washington. That's what President Trump's running into with all of this junk about the phone call and everything else. I mean, right. You're in a completely rigged system. Elly, you've seen it.
Yeah, what Larry's talking about is when they left, they took people with them, and put them in places like Malak. He got a position. He got a $30,000 raise after this case. So did Jocelyn Elders. And then she was made Surgeon General. And she knew about this. She was a part of this.
Wow.
And she got a position. Look at Stepkopoulos right now. He's on what, Face the Nation? He used to break out in hives and welt so bad over the stress going on here in Arkansas. He had to leave the Clinton drug czar group. You know, I can't even call them cronies anymore because they're all about drugs.
Right.
And, you know, what they did is they took all these people that they had in their little group, even state troopers. They took them all to Washington. And I really feel that Arkansas was the dry run for the Democrats to bring in the corruption into Washington because it's the same story. And Larry will tell you, it's the same situation over and over again, what they're doing. It's just a different person. And they go after your family. They go after your friends. They go after your neighbors and your in-laws. Anybody you know, they will go after until you quit. Now, luckily, I haven't had no death threats yet. I mean, I've gotten weird phone calls from China that I don't understand. But, you know, I'm not afraid of the Clintons anymore. I mean, there for a while I was getting fearful. At this point, I am not afraid of them.
Good for you.
Because I've seen what they have taken from Arkansas and moved it into Washington. And when they had free realm of the White House, you've seen what came out of it. We had Whitewater. We had Chinagate. We had, and Chinagate was one of the reasons why he was impeached. He was selling they were selling secrets to China.
Absolutely.
And now look at what's going on in Washington today. They had dealings in ambassadors and presidents all over the world they had access to. So they had time to set their regime up. And we are seeing it. And and when I looked into it, I found out that Kerry was here in the 80s. So was Comey. So was Mueller. What were they doing at the Rose Law Firm in the 80s?
Wow. How did you confirm that?
Wikipedia.
Well, wait a minute. So we don't really know. Wikipedia could be maybe inaccurate. What?
Well, why would they say they were in Arkansas looking at BCCI and AFTA and was at the Rose Law Firm, you know?
Larry, what do you think of that?
And that just goes in.
Let me explain that.
Yeah.
ADFA was a pilot program that they were fixing to expand all over the country. That's why I was dealing with Mueller. That's why I was dealing with all of these characters. They were coming in, and we were taking the model. Now, ADFA was basically, I'm not going to try to confuse the audience, there was a bond-issued loan program for housing in the 70s. And as those things started maturing, you just had all of this money coming in from people paying on those notes that technically had already been paid off. So what ADFA did is it came in, it took over managing all of those loans, and all of that money came into ADFA. And it was a gold mine. It was just, it was millions and millions of dollars, and it was a place where they could launder millions, hundreds of millions in cocaine from MENA right through that agency. And they were taking it, going to take it all over the country to every state. And so we had all of the cast of characters coming in here. That's where I met them. That's how I dealt with them. And yes, they were at the Rose Law Firm because that was the gathering point when anybody came in. We always gathered at the Rose.
So Larry, is there any way that you could see that this board of directors, the people who are currently at ADFA, would they not know about this? Or is ADFA today possibly something different than it was then? Or what's the status of ADFA now?
To my knowledge, ADFA is different today than it was back then because I busted it up.
Got it.
I mean, when everything came out, it screwed them up to where they couldn't be this quasi-state agency anymore. They were always a state agency when that benefited the firm. And then if it benefited the firm to be a private company, then they were a private company. So it was just, it was called a quasi-state agency.
It's kind of like the Clinton Foundation.
Exactly. And Jason, Ellie, this is why I know so much about what's going on today. The system that we had here, that I was a part of building, God forgive me, is in Washington. And it's been there since the day the Clintons got there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I simply call back the memory of everybody. Remember when Clinton went to Washington, you had a great situation where you had the famous words, "I didn't leave the party that left me." That's when all of these old-time Democrats left the Democratic Party because they were not going to adhere to the Clinton model, the role that Clinton made everybody have to play if you were going to stay there. So they left. They either quit, retired, or changed parties. And it all changed that day, or that time. That's when it all changed. Now, you've got the whole Washington, D.C., Ellie, is Arkansas. That's
Yes.
what it is. It's
Yes.
Arkansas. And just like Ellie
Jason,
said,
I might be able to help you out with the AFTA.
Sure.
When I investigated AFTA, when Larry broke them up, all of a sudden it was not long after BCCI did start. And when BCCI went to court, and Kerry was on, I believe, asking them questions on it, and you can find the hearing still. You'll see Kerry asking them questions on BCCI.
John Kerry?
BCCI was part of, yes. And see, everybody that is their buddies now were on the seats in, like, Congress and Senate back then. And BCCI was with the Saudis, I believe. And when they started
Pakistani,
getting
I
heat
think.
from that, yeah, it could be Pakistan, but
Probably both.
I didn't write all my notes.
Right.
And from BCCI is when they started up the Clinton Foundation, when the heat got on. So then they started the Clinton Foundation, but they started it here. But it was in Searcy, and where they kept all their records. And I think there was lots of records they were trying to hide in Searcy at a bank. They were on the second floor, and that second floor burnt. But the only thing that really burnt was all the documents.
Huh.
So that gives you a little idea of what I've been following.
Yeah, Larry.
well, and for example, what Eddie's talking about the Saudis, I was literally given the task from Clinton when the king of Saudi Arabia sent his son. I helped him buy his first bank in America. We bought the Union Bank building on Markham. And, he came here to buy a bank. And I had to take him around. I took him around here, and then I took him to Vegas, and that was the famous trip where the king got all bent out of shape because he lost so much money. But, yeah, we were knee-deep. And the Clintons, even in Arkansas, when he was governor of the third-rate, no-count state of Arkansas, they were already doing business with Saudi Arabia, with China, when it was illegal to do business with China in this country. The Clintons and the Stevens Corporation had Riceland Foods that had an office in China, and we were selling rice to China at a time when nobody could do business with China.
Yeah. And selling rice to China sounds like selling, ice to Eskimos.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, Larry. They
started the Clinton Foundation. It was just a formal way to shake down all these countries. And what you're seeing with Biden and his son, the reason they're fighting that so hard is because that's how all of these congressmen and senators have gone in with modest net worth. They're there a term or two, and all of a sudden they're millionaires. How'd that happen? Well, it's from exactly what you're seeing that Biden did with his son.
That's what AFTA, isn't it, Larry? Isn't this what they did here?
Yes, we did with that, but we did it all over the place, and nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you're on the inside, you didn't know about this stuff. You couldn't know about it. You couldn't hear about it. You couldn't know about it.
Yeah.
But
the other
look,
thing,
Ukraine is not the only country that we have shaken down.
Right.
There's a list that goes on and on. We've stripped many a country of its net worth. Greece, thanks to the Clinton Foundation and this shakedown like they did in Ukraine. They did it to the country of Greece. I've got the people in Greece, the government in Greece, that called and tried to hire me to get me to help turn it around because they're so screwed up because of it. This is serious. It's big.
It is. And, Larry, the other thing that strikes me as you're talking is that this concept of Bill Clinton coming out of Arkansas, a relatively obscure politician, and certainly in the 1980s, again, I'm caused to think back, that was a time where making a long-distance phone call was an ordeal. There was a cost associated with it. There weren't a million airplanes flying around. People weren't really going to Arkansas if you weren't in Louisiana or Texas. And I mean, certainly New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Chicago. People didn't know what the hell was going on in Little Rock, Arkansas. People had no idea what was going on at the Rose Law Firm or with the Stevens Investment Company. And it strikes me that this is part of the reason why the Clintons would have selected Arkansas. They're not really from Arkansas, but by going to this economically depressed, pardon me for saying this, but educationally less sophisticated than when compared to New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, this is a second tier, smaller type area that the Clintons basically took advantage of in the same exact way that the Clinton Foundation has done around the world in countries like Haiti and Malawi and all the places that we've heard of that they've taken advantage of. And frankly, inserting the relatively obscure Barack Obama into the presidency strikes me as a remarkably similar play.
Well, the thing you have to remember, when Bill Clinton ran for president, now remember, just like you said, he was a governor of a hick state, right?
Yeah.
But when he announced he was running for president, he had a massive nationwide organization already in place. Money, people on the ground. How did he do that? How did he do that when long-standing politicians trying to run for president that year, they couldn't get anything? And here was Clinton with a built-in network. And I would challenge you on one thing. Why did the Clintons pick Arkansas? I don't think it was the Clintons picked Arkansas. I was there. Jack and Whit Stevens picked Clinton. They owned Arkansas. They owned Arkansas and they owned Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And they were looking for the perfect person that they could take from infancy, essentially, and take on, make them president and rule the world.
Right.
And they found Bill Clinton, and that's why Mr. Witt came to me and said, I need you to look at this guy and tell us what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Clintons were picked. Bill Clinton was picked.
Right.
He didn't pick Arkansas. He was picked by the Stevens brothers.
Now, let me ask you this, Larry. When someone like Whit Stevens is selecting a candidate, he's not necessarily, I would presume that is, he's not necessarily looking for the same type of requirements that someone who actually wanted to properly run something would look for. He probably wants somebody who's a cocaine addict, a serial rapist, somebody who's got a lot of dirt in their closet that you could basically hold over his head at any given moment and blackmail the whole entire time he's in there. Wouldn't that be correct?
Well, that'd be correct. I was told I need to know if he's pliable and can you handle him.
Mm-hmm. Pliable meaning?
Meaning, can you leverage him? Can you
blackmail?
Pliable. Can we get stuff? Can we make him do what we want to do?
Right, by doing things like arresting his brother with a suitcase full of cocaine and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just remember, like Elly told you, the Stevens brothers, if you ran for dog catcher in Podunk, Arkansas, population 100, mm-hmm. you didn't get it unless you were approved by the Stevens brothers. You certainly didn't get to be prosecutor. You certainly didn't get to county sheriff. You certainly didn't get to be chief of police. You didn't get to be mayor. You didn't get to be judge. All of those were people that basically signed the loyalty oath to the Stevens brothers. And that's why we were called the Good Suit Boys, the Good Suit Club. I mean, we could get by with anything.
Wow.
We could get by with anything.
Wow.
Both Bill and Hillary had passed before they became into politics. Like Hillary wrote this huge thing on FALN. It's like it was like a terrorist organization, and it's against the cops. You know, get the piggies and all that, and of course Goldwater. And she was basically a big supporter of KKK. And Bill, the draft dodger, ended up going to Russia, and he met with some big kind of I'm not sure if they were ambassadors, but he met with them in Russia right about his college years also. And Larry, I don't know if Larry knows about it, but he could probably tell you more because I didn't look too far into it.
Yeah, when Bill went when Bill was a Rhodes Scholar, and he goes to England, right? He didn't go to the Rhodes School. He didn't. He went to Russia. I even had a guy that was his roommate. The guy that was his roommate testified, told me, went public, that Bill Clinton didn't do anything. He was not a quote-unquote Rhodes Scholar graduate. He didn't graduate. He didn't even spend a semester there.
What was that guy's name again, the roommate, Larry?
I can't remember. My God, you're
something unusual.
But anyway, Bill didn't finish that school at all. He went to Russia. And there he met with several oligarchs, he told me. I didn't even know what a damn oligarch was when he was telling me about it. But he was setting a structure up of international relationships.
Right.
And he had the front door open for him. The Stevenses had connections and could get him in anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people are familiar with Hillary Clinton's association with the former, I guess he was a congressman, the guy who was the grand cyclops in the Ku Klux Klan. What was that guy's name again?
Byrd, Senator Byrd. And you know that 89% of the Democrats went to his funeral and called him a mentor, even Biden. And guess what? And you can still find the article. Obama spoke highly of Senator Byrd.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
And I will tell you just a brief story of the first time I met Hillary. We had set up a fundraiser at the Cajuns Wharf for the farmers Northeast Arkansas, rich farmers, to come in. And we were there to have this meet and greet. Hillary was late. She didn't show up. We panicked. She finally shows up, and this is a true story. She comes walking in. She had on, what do you call that, a muumuu. She had a muumuu. She had hairy legs, hair under her arms, filthy hair. She hated taking baths. And she had flip-flops. And she had around her neck, I'll never will forget it, it was like on a dog tag chain. And it was like a press pass size card. And it said, a proud member of the United States Communist Party.
Jeez.
And she wore that fundraiser for him to be governor.
It's really unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I did meet Hillary one time, Jason, and I was going for a job interview down in Little Rock, and I cut through the Rose Law Firm parking lot to get to the other street behind it, kind of thing. And she walks up on me, and the first thing I noticed was how bad this woman smelled. I looked at the bottom of my shoe to see what I'd stepped in. And she put her hand out, and I'm thinking, this is a stranger. And she goes, you don't know who I am? And I said, no, and I just walked on. But then the smell went away. And then I realized this woman, it's almost like something dead. I'm serious. She smells bad. I don't know if Larry smelled the same thing I smelled, but you can't get close to her.
Ellie, we went through that all the time. I mean, we would have to keep people away from her because she had an odor. It was just an odor. It was like rotten meat or something. I can't describe it. But, I mean, I always kind of giggled when she was running for president, and they were talking about how they had her separated from people with the rope line. And I always thought maybe that was because of the odor. But it wasn't just because she didn't bathe. I mean, she hated bathing. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I was with them in the governor's detention day and night. I'm telling you, that woman would not shower or bathe
So
in
bizarre.
any way. She could get
Strobe
by.
Talbot.
But
Strobe Talbot was the
it
roommates.
wasn't body odor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't body odor. Yes, you're right.
Sorry to
And
interrupt
he
you there.
had the first homosexual experience with Bill.
Wait, say
He
again?
told us he had the first homosexual experience with Bill.
Strobe Talbot.
Yeah. Sure did.
How do you
And then
know
when I
that?
asked Bill about it, he said, well, he told me. And then I asked Bill about it. And Bill said, well, you know, you got to try everything.
Huh. Wow. Interesting. Well, it looks like they remained friends. Oh, no, sorry. This is not a picture of them together. This is just a composite photo of Bill Clinton and Strobe Talbot. Definitely, we've heard a number of stories of people saying that Bill Clinton has engaged in homosexual activity. But, I mean, that's certainly the least of what he's done. That's his own business if he wants to go and do that. I think that the indiscriminate murdering of innocent young children, and we've heard testimony on this show from a variety of individuals who allege to have been raped by Bill Clinton. Let me take you guys back to Don Henry.
Let me give you one thing right quick, and Elly will remember this. Probably the greatest evil that Bill did had to do with the tainted blood that we sold Canada.
Yeah.
That I was in the middle of. I mean, we go get blood from the prisoners in our prisons, sell it to Canada, and come to find out it was tainted with AIDS.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking yesterday, Larry, with Charles Ortel about just about 5 days ago, the Singh brothers, the principals at an Indian generic drug company called Ranbaxy, have been incarcerated in India in part for their role in disseminating, faulty pharmaceuticals around the world through the Clinton Foundation. So this notion that they would medically terrorize people, no one should be surprised by this. I mean, these are the same people who smile on television and tell us they want to have a no-fly zone over a country that's not our country, that hasn't invited us to be there. I mean, another big part of what I hope to do with Crowdsource the Truth is by bringing viewers information from people like you, Larry, and you, Elly, I hope that people will wake up to the fact that what we've been told on the news is so absurd. I mean, the notion that Bill and Hillary Clinton are trying to help anyone is so far away from the truth. I really want people to try to understand that, and hopefully one of these stories will click with everybody. Let me take you back, though, to Don Henry and Kevin Ives, and I want to talk, before we run out of time, about the wrestler. He claimed to be an eyewitness, and I've seen a few videos of him and everything, but nothing lately, and all these lawsuits are being dismissed. What do we know about Billy Jack, is it, Elly?
Well, he did an interview on our ABC News, KATV, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to Linda about it, a little bit, and she believes him. But, he is just way out there. And, drug use over time just really destroys the brain. Right. And I think that's part of it, but I think he is genuinely scared. Mm-hmm. And I heard he has got a video of that night. Right. And he is protecting it. And, I'm so scared that he'll end up dead. And I'm hoping he's made copies and spread them around. Right. I heard he has, but I've heard from... I had a doctor, and I don't have him anymore, that gave me some info. He actually did the autopsy of the people that were up under Whitewater, McDougal's. Mm-hmm. And he told me that he had gotten wind that Billy Jack had made multiple copies, and they were switching them around to different people all over the states. I don't know if it's true. I believe he's credible because of things that he has seen, that he says. But, you have to really watch because, even I have looked into it so deep that I know facts and stuff. But it makes sense for how the drugs made it to Chicago so heavily back in the 80s because there was a big surge in crack in the 80s that started that it just flowed, and I always wondered where it came from. And he was taking it to Chicago. So I'm starting to really believe this guy, but we have to wait, and if we get, and I believe he did it under oath. I believe he did, he swore under oath.
Let's fill people in just a bit. Sorry, Elly, but let's fill people in because we haven't even, during this show, touched upon the whole Mena Airport. The concept here is, with the Bushes, the Clintons got involved in a plan that was basically exposed by the revelations of Iran-Contra, where guns from the Arkansas armory were stolen, basically, and sold to Iran. The money was then used to buy cocaine, as Larry has told us, which was moved through Nicaragua to Barry Seal's aircraft, where they were landed in Arkansas. Our buddy Billy Jack alleges that he was hired to video record the drug drops. He was basically a professional wrestler and a drug user himself, so kind of a low-grade criminal, essentially, who was carrying out a criminal act, who in the later years of his life, I guess his conscience has gotten to him, and he's come forward to reveal this. But it's, again, when someone makes a revelation like this that is against their own self-interest, why would he reveal this? It seems contrary to anything sensible that he would do. So it does lend a certain credibility to what he is saying. What do you think of that, Larry? Have you spoken to Billy Jack? Do you know anything about his story?
I've talked to him a couple of times, and both times that I was with him, he was a man scared to death. Scared to death.
Yeah.
And Jason, I can't make you, Elly knows, I guess, but I can't make you or the audience know. Think about this cast of characters. I have to live here with these creeps that kill people left and right, and they're all mad at me and coming at me. And it's been awfully tough, tougher than anybody can imagine. I don't talk about it a lot because I don't want it to make people not come out and tell the truth.
Right.
Out of fear.
Right.
So I just try to suck it up and go on. But it's not a good place to be when you're talking about the Clintons or the system in Washington now. It's just not, it's not safe. It's not good.
Yeah. And you've told me,
Jason?
Larry, sorry, Elly, real quick. Larry's told me in confidence, and we won't share it here, but he's told me about some of the measures that he takes to protect himself and secure the information that he's got. We're not going to discuss that operational security, of course, but it is really very important that our viewers visit nicholslive.com and help Larry. This is not some joke, and this is not fairy tales that Larry is making up. The people in Arkansas who know about these things are in danger, and as the swamp starts to drain and the filth starts to circle the drain, I think we're going to see a lot of desperate people making desperate moves. So I hope that our viewers will visit paypal.com and use Larry's PayPal address, nicholslive@aol.com, to send Larry some money. If you haven't in the past, if you're watching the show regularly, send Larry $5. And if you're making millions of dollars a year, send him $200. Larry needs $2,000 in a pretty immediate way, and he's with us every week. If you're watching this show, please support Larry financially. Sorry, Elly, what did you want to tell us?
There is another witness that is very credible and was in the middle of it, and Larry probably knows her, is Jean Duffy. She was part of the drug task force, and they chased her out of the state. And she, I think, has recently been working with Linda Ives again. But she's very important. She was the drug task force, and she uncovered the same things we're talking about.
Wow. It's really interesting, as you mention these people, because I'm looking around and all of the information has basically been removed from any kind of major news website. I see YouTube, YouTube and Facebook links to stories about Gene Duffy, but
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Investigator News, and as well as anything I get from Linda Ives, I post on my news Facebook page, Investigators. And I still they take stuff out daily. The only thing I don't have is the fourth voice on the track with Jeremiah Films, and it keeps being taken. But I have a list. I call it the Clinton Corruption, and Jason, go look through there, and you'll see some of the stuff we've been talking about, and it does have interviews with different people. Obstruction of justice is still there as of today.
That's good.
And then there's the Clinton Chronicles were still there today. The only thing was Jeremiah Films and some stuff I have on Soros and the connections to the Clintons. But, you know, they're married in now, so we can understand
Elly,
why
it's virtually impossible to find. I'm searching Investigator News, Clinton Chronicles on YouTube, and it's not bringing it up. I mean, this is part of the problem.
They bury me.
How do we find
But
you
I am on
there?
Facebook. I am on Facebook under Investigator News.
Well, let's just start with YouTube for a second. How can we find you on YouTube here?
It's, like I said, it's under
I think I found it.
Investigator.
I think I found it. Okay, so
It should have Nichols.
Clinton Cash. No. Investigators News. I think I found a playlist called Investigators News, Clinton Corruption, and Kevin Ives. Here we go. I think I found it. I do see it with the eagle. Okay, so let me subscribe to this, and I'm going to put the link into. You got a video with a satellite there. It looks like from 4 months ago.
Yes, yeah.
Only 25 subscribers, so we'll hopefully give you a boost there.
I'm slowly building, but I'm big on, like, the whistleblowers. I have quite a few of yours. If you look through my page, you'll see I have whistleblowers and a lot of your videos on there.
Great, thank you.
And I grab a lot of news from, just to uncover what is going on with, what the Democrats are doing. And so I do post, I keep your videos there, and anytime I see whistleblowers from you, I put it over there in, in all the different, in the different sections that I have.
Thank you for doing that, Elly. I've just put the link to your YouTube channel into the comments, and I'll include it also in the description after we're done with the show so that people can link to your website. You've done a really, rather to your YouTube channel, you've done a really great job.
And I keep all the up-to-date info. Now, some of it Linda Ives has, like, don't post it, so I don't. But on my investigators page, on Facebook, I post all the up-to-date stuff on the Don Henry and Kevin Ives case and what's going on.
And if I just look for investigators, Elly Holder, will I find that?
Yeah, just it's under investigators. It's got like a
I think I found
judge's little. Yeah.
I think I found it. So this is good. So people can follow you there on Facebook. People can go and subscribe to your YouTube channel. This is a good way that hopefully other people, just like you were watching us, Elly, hopefully other people are watching the show right now and can help us shed some light on these investigations, because as you've described, the Clintons are very adept at controlling law enforcement, shutting down investigations. It's amazing, Larry. One of my close friends who thinks I'm crazy for doing this channel, I remember when I first started, I was talking to him about Vince Foster's death, and he kept quoting to me little factoids taken from the various investigations that had been done. And he felt that because these investigations had been done, therefore the case was closed. But as you've told us, Larry, and as so many people who watch Crowdsource the Truth are aware, manipulating these investigations and getting fraudulent information into court cases and findings and rulings is a big part of the way that this mechanism glosses over falsehoods and lends credibility to them. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, and you're seeing it play out right in front of you with what they're doing with the whistleblower thing with Trump.
Right.
They're doing it out in front of everybody.
Right.
I mean, guys, I'm telling, if you've got information that can hurt them, now I believe people will believe me when I say the media will cover it up. People used to tell me all the time, well, you said this was in the paper, but it's not up there now. So if it was there, if it was real, it'd really be there. No, right. They'll make it go away.
Yeah.
And they can bury it to where you can't be found. Trust me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's why it's super important that people who are watching our show every week support Larry by going to nicholslive.com. You're going to want to click on the donate tab. That's going to give you information that you need to send Larry some money. Go to paypal.com and use nicholslive@aol.com. I think, Larry, somebody out there could send you $1,000 and really improve your entire month. People can also stick quantities of cash into an envelope and mail it to Larry in Conway, Arkansas. We're just about out of time for today. I'm really glad that we've met Elly and brought her on to the show. Elly, it's quite clear that you've done a lot of research into this matter, and I hope to have you back, and maybe we can get Linda Ives involved.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to share with us today before we close out for now?
Well, let me do this first,
Yeah.
Elly. You want my phone number? If you want to write it down right quick, I'll give it to you.
We can do that after the show, Larry, unless you want everybody to have your phone number.
Yeah, whatever.
I'll make sure Elly gets it. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Elly, anything you'd like to share before we go?
Just that, Kirk Lane and Don Harmon are the ones that killed the boys. And we need these, and they're in power. You see, they're still in power, and Campbell. We need these two put away. We need indictments. We need them charged with murder. And the thing that gets me that you always hear is Hillary's motto that she told them that night was no witnesses. No witnesses.
Wow.
And there is no statute of limitation on murder. And the Clintons ordered these deaths. They ordered these boys to be killed. No witnesses. There you go.
Yeah. Well, and here's something written by Gene Duffy on a website called idfiles.com/investigations. Is this a site that's run by Gene Duffy? Do you know?
I don't know.
It looks like it is. Website contributors left to right. Mark Cassisi, Gene Duffy, Ron Dane, Linda Ives, and James Duffy. So there you go. This is the website run by the family and the former drug task force officer. These people are amazing. I really appreciate their relentless pursuit of justice. It's such a tragedy that two young boys who could have achieved literally almost anything, well, 5 from what you've told us, have just been totally murdered so that the criminal cartel that is the Clinton crime syndicate could carry on. We're going to have to keep looking into this some more. Got to thank you tremendously for joining us, Elly. And Larry, of course, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Larry, anything else you want to say before we wrap it up today?
No, I just want to thank Elly for staying with it. It takes that kind of dedication to break a case like this.
Absolutely.
And I'm proud of it.
Thank you both so much for everything you've done.
And I thank Larry Nichols, and I told you on the phone earlier, he's my mentor. I look up to him so highly, and I hope to meet him very soon.
Thank you so much, Elly. And thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back later tonight at 8 p.m. with more Pain. Michael Moore of True Pundit. Don't miss that. see everybody. And don't forget, Crowdsource the Truth can't bring you shows like this without your support. So please become a sponsor. Go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You're going to get access to tons of exclusive content, including tonight's episode of More Pain. And you're going to keep independent journalism sustainable so that we can stay on these types of investigations and bring the information to you. Thanks for watching, everybody.